On the Titanic, there was a couple who suddenly faced a disaster. In a hurry, they ran towards the lifeboats. Upon reaching them, they discovered that there was only space for one person. In that moment, the husband pushed his wife aside and took a seat in the lifeboat. His wife, standing on the sinking ship, shouted something to him. The teacher paused and asked her students, "What do you think she shouted?" Most students replied, "I hate you." After hearing these responses, she noticed a boy in the corner who had been silent throughout. The teacher approached him and asked for his answer. The boy responded, "Teacher, I think she shouted to take care of our child." Surprised, the teacher asked, "Have you heard this story before?" The boy shook his head and said, "No, I haven't heard it before. But that's what my mom said to my dad before she passed away." The teacher sighed, acknowledging that the boy's answer was correct. She continued with the story. The ship sank, and the man went home to raise their daughter alone. Many years later, he passed away. While sorting through his belongings, the daughter found his diary. In it, she discovered that when her parents boarded the ship, her mother had already been diagnosed with a terminal illness. At that critical moment when the ship was sinking, the father rushed towards the only chance of survival. In his diary, the man wrote how much he wished to sink into the depths with his wife, but for the sake of their daughter, he had to stay alive. The story ended, and the entire class fell silent. The teacher knew that the students had grasped the allegory of the story. Behind the good and evil in this world, there are many complex factors that are difficult to understand. Therefore, we should not only focus on the surface, but refrain from judging right or wrong until we fully comprehend the whole picture of a situation. 5 years ago, I learned one of the most important lessons of my life. It happened on a day in San Francisco in a taxi. I hailed a taxi on the road and headed towards the central square. We were driving in the right lane when suddenly, a black car darted out from the side and cut in front of us. My taxi driver slammed on the brakes, skidding just inches away from hitting the black car. The driver of the black car, the one who almost caused a major accident, rolled down his window and started yelling obscenities at us. My taxi driver simply smiled and waved at him. I was incredulous and asked him why he did that. "That guy almost wrecked your car and could have seriously injured us." My taxi driver then explained to me, "I call it the garbage truck rule. Many people are like garbage trucks. They go around filled with garbage, full of frustration, anger, and disappointment. As their garbage accumulates, they look for a place to dump it, and if they encounter you, they will dump it on you. When someone tries to dump garbage on you, don't take it to heart. Instead, just smile, wave, wish them good luck, and keep moving forward. By maintaining a positive and optimistic attitude, we can better handle any situation and make our lives happier and more fulfilling." There was a boy who loved to draw. One day, his mother brought his grandfather with white hair back home. From then on, they had to live with the grandfather. The boy wanted to shake hands with his grandfather, but the grandfather did not react. The boy gradually realized that this grandfather was not the one he knew. He looked sad, rarely spoke, and always stared blankly into space, as if his soul was not in his body. The mother didn't allow the boy to watch cartoons anymore. The TV always had to be tuned to the news channel for the grandfather to watch. The mother would flip through old photo albums in front of the grandfather, trying to evoke his memories of the past. But the old man showed no response and even refused to look. This made the mother cry and made the young boy feel the sadness in the house. One day, the boy found a photo of the grandfather as a young boy missing a tooth, holding an ice cream in front of an old car. The boy had a sudden idea and drew the scene on the back of the photo. The moment when the grandfather saw the car for the first time, his expression full of surprise. Hours later, the grandfather noticed the drawing left by the boy on the ground, picked it up, and was somehow reminded of the long-forgotten memory. This was the moment he saw a kind old car and was immediately fascinated by it. The next day, the boy found another old photo of the grandfather riding a bicycle with his friends, and he drew another perspective on the back. After the boy left, the grandfather surprisingly picked up the photo and recalled the joy of riding with his friends. The boy continued his attempts. He found a photo of the grandfather with his grandmother and drew the expression of the grandfather falling in love at first sight with his grandmother on the back. The boy showed it directly to the grandfather, who remembered the first date with his deceased wife. This time, the old man finally smiled at his grandson. With the boy's daily reminders, the grandfather began to pick up the pieces of his life. His last days were no longer filled with sadness and emptiness. One late night, the grandfather fell ill and urgently wanted to go out, as if he had dreamt of something urgent. The mother had a hard time persuading him to come back home. The boy quickly took out the photo album and showed the grandfather a picture. The grandfather with his wife and newborn daughter, with a drawing of him holding the crying baby on the back. This made him remember the scene when he first became a father and saw his daughter. After seeing his daughter in front of him, the grandfather finally recognized her and slowly held her hand. Sometime later, when the boy returned home from school, there was no sound of the TV and no snoring in the room. Looking at the empty couch, the boy realized that the grandfather had passed away. The boy was sad for a long time. During this period, he couldn't draw anything. When he went to watch TV and held the remote that now belonged only to him, it always stayed on the news channel. The mother noticed her son's sorrow and took out the photo album, showing him a picture. The young grandfather painting. It turned out that the grandfather also loved to draw. He loved to draw because it conveyed emotions, and what could make a person with Alzheimer's recall the past was the fireworks of emotions. The boy could start drawing again, and he planned to keep drawing. This is a true story about lost memories and enduring memories. Once upon a time, there was a sparrow who was very satisfied with his life. He often roamed around, observing everything around him. One day, he saw a swan and noticed how clean and white it was. He thought to himself, "I am so speckled and spotted. The swan must be the happiest bird in the world." He approached the swan and said, "You must be the happiest bird in the world. You are so clean and white, while I am so speckled and no one likes me." The swan replied, "Actually, before I saw a parrot, I always thought I was the happiest bird. It has two beautiful colors, and I believed the parrot was the happiest bird in the world." The sparrow then found the parrot and explained everything. The parrot said, "I thought I was the happiest until I saw a peacock. I only have two colors, but the peacock has multiple colors." The sparrow then visited the peacock at the zoo and saw how many people were amazed by its beauty. After the people left, the sparrow approached the peacock and said, "Dear peacock, you are so beautiful. Thousands of people come to see you every day, but when people see me, they just want me to leave. I believe you are the happiest bird in the world." The peacock sadly replied, "I always thought I was the most beautiful and happiest bird in the world, but because of my beauty, I am trapped in this confined cage. For a while, I have been thinking that if I were a sparrow without so much charm, I could escape this cage and fly freely. Do not always envy others' lives, but strive to make your own life better and more fulfilling. The secret to happiness is to cherish what God has given us and to reject comparisons that only lead to unhappiness. Everyone can find their own happiness as long as they search for it and cherish